Greetings, humans. You have entered the Command Zone, your destination for all aspects of Elder Dragon Highlander. Enjoy your stay.
It would be royals, it can run in our blood. The kind of looks just ain't for us. We crave a different kind of buzz. Let me be your ruler. You can call me Queen Bee, and baby I'll rule. Let me live that fantasy. Hey, how's it going, everybody? You're listening to the Command Zone podcast. /watching it on youtube.com/the-command-zone-podcast. I'm your host, Jimmy Wong.
How's it? It's Josh Lee Kwai.
It's that time.
It is that time. Modern Horizons is almost here. Oof. And that means we are going to be unveiling our exclusive, provided to us free of charge from Wizards of the Coast, preview cards.
Preview card.
I don't know.
I thought you were going to hype up what it was.
They always tell us you got to say that. I don't know why.
It's true. Free of charge.
Yes, this card that I'm holding in my hand, they did not charge us for it.
It is absurd, and I cannot wait to talk about it. In fact, it may just be... You thought Feather was cool?
Listen, we had Vanifar before that.
Yep.
And I would say, I'm pretty certain this, it's a legendary creature, by the way, is the most powerful of those three cards by a decent margin.
I'd say more than a decent margin. We've never had a commander card that I think could easily enter into cEDH territory, and
This one absolutely does. It's
knocks it out of the park.
It's possibly too powerful, but
yeah. And now, if you're going to want to pre-order this card or any of the other cards from Modern Horizons, you should head on over to cardkingdom.com/commandzone. That's our affiliate link. Modern Horizons is going to be an amazing set. I can already tell based on the things that we've seen, and I think you're going to want a lot of those cards. So you're going to buy them anyway. Use our affiliate link. You'll support the show.
Yeah, or you can order the cards that are going to go in this Urza deck, whether you're building the very mean version or maybe a more fun version.
Wow, you just spoiled the name of the card.
Oh, yeah, it's Urza. Sorry. Oh,
well,
if you skipped ahead, you wouldn't even know the name yet.
You wouldn't even know.
Although they'd skip ahead to the part where saying the name again, so it wouldn't matter.
That's a good point.
When you do order those cards, a lot of them are probably not going to be super, super cheap. You know, they might be worth a few dollars. So
like
you want to protect them. So you're going to want to put them into an Ultra Pro Eclipse sleeve. You're going to want to make sure that you play them onto a sweet play mat so they don't get all dirty. You know, you don't want to just play it on the sidewalk like we used to as kids.
Gravel.
Yeah, make sure that you use Ultra Pro products to protect and organize all of your cards. They are the best.
And the final way to support the show, of course, is at patreon.com, directly /commandzone. That is how you can be a patron of the show. You can join our Discord server where we discuss spoilers like these, and as well as brew. You can get help from other players, as well as talk to Josh and I directly online. And we do one special thing every episode where we shout out one lucky patron. So this week's episode is dedicated to Michael Davignon.
Michael, you rock.
You do rock.
We both did the D'Artagnan thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. It could go either way. It
One
could
for
be
all.
Davignon too.
All for one.
Yeah. All right, let's jump into our main topic. I know you're all chomping at the bit to see what our preview card is. Jimmy?
Oh boy, it's me?
That was a drum roll. Just in case people didn't know.
I thought you were just clearing your throat. The card that we are previewing for Modern Horizons is a mythic rare. It is Urza, Lord Artificer. Urza is back, and boy, is he more powerful than ever.
Way better than ever, yeah.
Yeah, 2 blue for a legendary creature, human artificer. He's a 1/4.
There's a lot of text, so just pay attention.
There are 3 main pieces of text here. The first piece of text: when Urza, Lord Artificer, enters the battlefield, create a 0/0 colorless construct artifact creature token with this creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control. The second line of text: tap an untapped artifact you control, add a blue mana. The third line of text, because 2 wasn't enough. 5 generic mana. Shuffle your library, then exile the top card. Until end of turn, you may play that card without paying his mana cost.
So 5 generic mana, do that.
Yeah.
So if you have 10 generic mana, or 10 mana of any color, basically, you shuffle your library, exile the top card, play it without paying its mana cost, then do that again.
Yeah. And how are you going to ever pay for that much?
Yeah,
That's 5. It's so much mana.
Crazy.
There's only a way that you had a card that helped gain you more mana.
Yeah, if only Urza made all your artifacts into Moxen.
Including the one that he comes into the battlefield with.
That's right.
Which becomes a big creature over time, too.
So at a base level, he's a 4 mana 1/4 that brings a mana rock with him.
Yeah. That may be huge, could also attack, but more importantly, can also tap for mana without needing to have haste.
Oh yeah,
because-
it's like a zombie, right?
Yeah.
Where it doesn't give the artifact the ability to tap for mana. It says tap an untapped artifact you control, add blue. So that's like a downside. It's like Urza's tapping the thing to add the mana. So it doesn't require summoning sickness doesn't matter.
Yeah, the creature that you put onto the battlefield, you can tap it because Urza is the one that has the activated ability to do that.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
WoW is very right. So I'm gonna tell a little story. It's a slight spoiler. Obviously, the next game nights is gonna be around Modern Horizons.
Yes.
I don't think that's gonna surprise anyone. What happens normally for game nights is we choose the guests, and if you've been paying attention, you'll know that it's Graham and Kathleen from Loading Ready Run. And then we show, all the legendary creatures in the set to everybody, and we say to the guests, you choose first, and Jimmy and I will choose from what remains. Mm-hmm. So it turned out that we won't spoil we don't know what cards have been spoiled at this point. But it turns out that I got Urza at the end of this. I chose Urza. Because I was like, this looks pretty powerful. I'll build this.
Pretty powerful.
Yeah. So as I started to build it, I called Jimmy into my office and I was like, Jimmy, I gotta change because I can't play this because this is ridiculous. This will destroy every other deck at the table.
It will destroy most decks in EDH if built correctly.
Yeah, we're going to talk about this a little near the end, but yeah, it's definitely cEDH level, competitive level. I would be very, very surprised if this is not like a tier 1 or 1.5 commander. So WoW was the first thing we thought when we saw it. I mean, I thought it was going to be powerful, but as I started to put it together, it became clear that it's very powerful.
Well, I even was like, well, can you build it in a subpar way? And it was like, not really.
It seemed hard to do that. I think you probably could. It's tough for us to on game nights because people will just be like, well, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? In general, we like to build like a pretty good version of the deck, and a good version of Urza, it feels broken.
It's just far more powerful than any of the other options we had. And we looked at it and we thought about it for a while, and it was very clear that Urza is just bonkers powerful compared to the rest.
But the good part of this is that I got a fair way into building that deck, and so we're going to actually talk about some of the things you can do with this commander if you do want to build it. So the first category, this won't be a full deck tech, but it's going to be definitely more in-depth than our normal preview episode. Although I suppose with Feather, we kind of did a similar thing. Maybe we're just doing this now. I don't know.
Hey, look, if Wizards is going to provide us with a card like this, we are going to be excited about it. I don't know anything about Modern, by the way, and I'm sure the implications of this card in Modern are also somewhat significant, but in EDH, this is going to be a whammy of a card.
Yeah. Okay, so the first category is Cheerios.
Cheerio.
Because there are a ton of 0 mana cost artifacts. Now, most of them don't do a lot, but Cheerios is a deck. Anybody that runs a SRAM deck knows there's a bunch of equipment that costs 0. There's
Bones.
Think of like a quarter shield, kite shield. There's a bunch of cards like this, and they're all 0 mana. So you play those, then when Urza's out, they're literally Mox Sapphire plus.
Yeah, a card that is very banned in EDH.
Yeah.
So that's pretty good.
If you just like, hey, I'm going to turn all like 20 cards in my deck into Moxes.
I have this 25-cent card called the Quarter Shield, and with Urza, it becomes one of the most powerful cards ever printed.
It becomes a $9,000 card.
Yeah, ever printed in the history of Magic. Yeah, so Cheerios comes from the name, obviously, of when you see the card, it says 0 at the top right. Looks like a Cheerio. Thus, there have been decks built around this sort of thing. Wes played a SRAM deck on game nights, and you could see how powerful it was because his commander let him draw cards when he played in equipment or an artifact like that. So he would just basically cycle all these cards. Urza just turns them all into mana rocks, colored mana rocks, no less.
And also, SRAM had that sort of restriction in that it had to be equipment, right? Mm-hmm. But Urza doesn't care. It's just artifacts. So there's a bunch of 0 mana artifacts that are still going to be Mox. And actually, some of them are useful. There's a bunch of 0 mana artifacts that are like, you wouldn't really run the card all by itself, but with the upside of it's also a mana rock, you definitely would. So there's like Tormod's Crypt.
Yeah.
Which is, a graveyard hoser. There's like
a card you would normally not really play because there are other better options to hose graveyards.
But like if you're like, well, sometimes it's mana,
yeah,
then you 100% run it. There's like Zurin Orb, which is life gain. You sacrifice lands to gain life.
Yeah, usually only seen in like Omnath decks, but now all of a sudden it becomes a multi-utility artifact.
There's Spellbook, which just reliquary towers for your hand, basically. Again, not a card you would play because that's not worth a card by itself, but when it's 0 mana, man, I keep doing that.
Wow, you keep doing that. For those of you listening, Josh is unable to toss a piece of paper.
It took me
behind his
3
eye.
tries to get the table. I think I caught that from DJ.
Dark Sphere is another card I didn't even know existed. It's from the dark. Normally, it's just an artifact that costs 0. You tap it, and you prevent damage from a source. The next time that source would deal damage, you prevent half of it.
It's like a half fog for one thing. It's
Yeah,
pretty bad.
It's
but
awful.
But if it also taps for mana, it's a Moxen that does that.
And in general, you'll find that cEDH decks play like 7 to 8 0 mana cost cards, all of the different Moxes that do exist that you can play.
The Chrome Moxes, the Mox Diamonds, and all that stuff,
And now we just have you basically have access to an additional like 8 to 10 of them that you could easily play in this deck. And so that's why we think that the cEDH implications of this are very powerful. Now, of course, you have to cast Urza first, otherwise you're just playing these 0-drop artifacts. But once Urza's out,
we learned from how priority works. If Urza doesn't get countered, you're going to get to tap all those artifacts for mana.
Yeah.
So there's not going to be a time in there to respond. At least, even if they go to swords it, you're going to get the mana off the rocks one time at least.
Yeah.
There's also a bunch. The next category I called plus mana rock. So think of all your artifacts with static abilities. They become that plus mana rock, right? So you're looking at like Torpor Orb.
Yeah, creatures entering the battlefield don't cause abilities to trigger, which is very relevant, very important in EDH in general.
Sometimes it can feel like not worth an entire card in your deck because you don't know. Yeah. Although I'll say Torpor Orb always like hoses decks, but at the same time, like now it also taps for mana, so you can just afford to have it in there.
Yeah, it would just the utility. I mean, like again. The card itself doesn't tap for mana. Urza has an ability that allows you to tap the artifact for mana. So don't think that the card itself has that text. You need to have Urza out for it. But Meekstone, again, another great card that is able to stop creatures with power 3 or greater that don't untap during their controller's untap step. And of course, we do know that snow-covered islands are going to be, or snow-covered lands are going to be in Modern Horizons. And one of my favorite cards in my mono red deck is Extraplanar Lens. And normally this card is very dangerous, right? It's a 3-mana artifact that comes out. You have to exile a land under it, so you do lose a land.
2 for ones you when you do it. Yeah.
But then all your lands tap for all your snow-covered lands, in this case, would tap for double mana. And you're doing that because other players aren't playing snow-covered basics. Now Extraplanar Lens doesn't 2-for-1 you as much because that card taps for mana.
It's also a mana rock.
It's a 3-mana mana rock, which is...
It's like Chromatic Lantern if Chromatic Lantern said all your lands tap for double rather than the other thing.
Yeah.
That should just be way better, right? It's like Mirari's Wake Plus. That Extraplanar Lens trick, if you haven't heard of it, you should look it up with snow-covered basics. Although it might not be as great right now right when Modern Horizons comes out, I'm assuming a lot of people are going to put a bunch of snow-covered lands in their decks just for novelty because they look cool.
I mean, I like the look of them in general, but they the original ones cost a decent amount, and trying to outfit all of your lands as that, it's not worth it, especially in like 3-color decks.
Yeah.
But in monocolor decks, Extraplanar Lens is one of the really great ways to just like jump ahead in terms of your mana.
There's stuff like Black Vice, which taxes people for having too many cards in hand. Ankh of Mishra, which does damage when people play lands. There's a really mean one too, Winter Orb, which would be...
Winter Orb may be the best because the card, if it's tapped, doesn't have its ability. But with Urza, you can instant speed tap it. So you can lock everyone else's lands down but keep yours alive.
Winter Orb is mean. Yeah, because Winter Orb says players can only untap 1 land per turn. 2 things here. One is you don't need your lands as much because all your Cheerios artifacts are tapping for mana, and artifacts untap just fine. And 2, like Jimmy said, there's a errata on Winter Orb. If you see one of the early versions, it doesn't say this, but if Winter Orb is tapped, it doesn't have that effect. So if you just tap it on the end step before your turn, then you get to untap all your lands, and nobody else does. This also works with like Howling Mine, which doesn't draw people extra cards if it's tapped. So you can tap it for mana, and then it untaps on your untap phase, and you just draw the extra card.
Yeah, so normally those cards are pretty... That part of the text is almost never relevant. Yeah. Sometimes people do make their decks to abuse Winter Orb, but like whenever you play Howling Mine, I'm never expecting that thing to get tapped.
Yep. There's even cards like Ichor Wellspring, which just draws you a card when it comes into play, and normally is not that much value. But think of how good Mind Stone is, right?
Yeah.
Mind Stone, you have to sacrifice it. This draws you a card when it comes into play and then taps for mana. Again, assuming Urza's out. Already we're in the realm of like insanely powerful because whenever you're playing around with one of the 2 pillars we always talk about, card draw and or ramp, you are in dangerous territory, and this is ramp on steroids.
You being the danger, not...
You being the card designer.
Yeah, you are the danger. I mean, look, I don't know who designed this card, but part of me goes, why?
Yeah.
Because
Well, hold on. We're going to get into that later. We're going to get into that later.
All right.
We're still talking about cool things you can do because there are a lot. Clues. and treasure tokens.
Yeah, all of a sudden they become
You
much
don't
more
sack them
valuable.
anymore.
Yeah, and the clues themselves are just great because you can turn them into card draw, or you can just use them for mana with Urza out.
Gold as well, although there's less of that. So obviously,
Right.
like Spell Swindle. Spell Swindle is crazy if you pull it off. But imagine if Mana Drain just gave you that mana every turn.
Yeah, and you could choose if you didn't want to use the Spell Swindle tokens to like tap them for mana.
You're just like, so when I Spell Swindle your 7-drop, now I just have 7 extra mana rocks.
Yeah. I mean, if you're not winning on that next turn, and I assume the cEDH decks will ramp out Urza as fast as they can, drop a ton of cards with Cheerios.
They're not going to even play Spell Swindle. It's too expensive for them.
That's too expensive. You're just playing a bunch of stuff, and then all of a sudden on turn 3 or 4, you have access to, I don't know, like 8 to 15 mana probably.
It could be an insane amount.
Yeah.
So there's cards like Confirmed Suspicions, which counters a spell, makes 3 clues. There's Trail of Evidence, which is a enchantment anytime you cast an instant or sorcery.
You investigate.
Yep, you make a clue token. So now anytime you cast an instant or sorcery, you brainstorm and you go, I make a mana rock. a mana rock. We pay 2 mana for those.
Yeah.
And in monocolored decks, we play as many of them as of the 2 mana ones as we can get.
Not to mention they don't add colored mana.
Right.
So a lot of times if people are trying to go...
Some do, Felwar Stone.
Right. But if people are trying to go infinite with like a Palinchron, one of the big things is like, oh crap, I don't have enough blue to recast Palinchron. I can make infinite colorless or whatever. Urza gets right around that.
Hornswoggle is another card that counters a creature spell and makes treasure. And again, it becomes a mini mana drain when you do stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, it's pretty crazy.
Tamiyo's Journal, too, if you're playing a lot of clues, can also just start tutoring for you, but also you're making a mana rock every turn. And getting to 5 mana in this deck, I think, is not an issue whatsoever. So there's a lot of things that happen here with Urza that are just absurd.
Plus,
we haven't even talked about his third ability, by the way.
Yeah, this is just the tapping artifacts for mana part. And we're not done yet. There are artifact payoffs. So, like, Efficient Construction is an enchantment that anytime you cast, or is it cast? Cast an artifact, you create a Thopter token, which is an artifact, which taps for more mana.
Which also makes, by the way, it's not completely irrelevant that the creature that comes into the battlefield gets bigger every single time you play an artifact.
That's true. You get one creature that's basically as big as the number of artifacts you have.
Yeah, it could be like a 7/7 on turn 3 or whatever and just start smacking people for a lot of damage as well.
Even bigger than that.
Oh, totally.
Because if you cast Urza, hold your artifacts, and then, go blah, 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 somewhere in there, cast Efficient Construction.
Right.
You could have 9-10 artifacts easy.
Yeah. Another card that I really like from M19, the core set, is Psy Master Thopterist, and he's the same as Efficient Construction. Whenever you cast an artifact, you make a 1/1 colorless Thopter. But the other ability, 1 in the blue to sacrifice 2 artifacts, and then you draw a card. You can tap for that 1 in the blue with the 2 artifacts you sack. Pretty good. Or with the
the artifact you're gonna sack, you can tap it first for mana.
Yeah.
There's Riddlesmith that lets you loot when I think artifacts come into play. There's Thopter Spy Network that again is card draw and makes artifacts. There's
Thopter Spy Network is great in this.
There's Antiquities War, which is the saga from Dominaria that turns all of your artifacts into 5/5s.
Right.
So once you've gone through all of that you could maybe get to that point.
Yeah.
And that could be maybe a win condition in the deck to turn all the artifacts, the 50 million artifacts you made into...
Well, not to mention the first 2 phases are you're revealing artifacts, and you're finding them from the top cards of your library. So you are going to be drawing cards off of this as well.
Yeah, this is pretty nuts already, right? And we're talking about, you might be surprised to know, that we haven't even gotten into what I consider to be the really broken, powerful stuff.
Yeah, we're just talking about the cutesy stuff we're doing right now.
Yeah.
And just the efficiency of all of it.
Some of this would be the basis in a more competitive style deck, but this is also stuff that could be in the quote-unquote fun version, except for maybe Winter Orb.
Fun version? I don't think there is a fun version of this deck.
We sort of just ran down all the... how would you say? The
value-based / cool interactions / ways to make this work more smoothly in your deck.
Fun stuff.
Fun, yeah. It's all fun
powerful
to the right
stuff.
person, right?
Yeah. Now we're going to talk about the broken stuff you can do. And I'll admit, I didn't go down the road here totally. I just started to, saw where the path was leading, and was like, okay, I'm sure you can do a bunch of this broken stuff.
You started to feel bad about yourself, right? You're like, oh boy.
I was like, that was the point at which I was like, I got to change what I'm building. So I didn't finish tweaking, but we're just going to mention some possibilities of stuff you could do in here. And I'm sure the cEDH people and everybody else will figure out the specifics of tweaking it to the most highly tuned. And again, listen, I got in trouble a little on Twitter recently for even mentioning infinite combos. So to that one person, I apologize. But it kind of is within our job.
Wait, who's the one person? Never
It's
mind.
kind of
Let's not get
within
into
our
it.
job here to just lay out the possibilities. I don't tell people how to play. Play how you want to play. Just make sure that if you see Urza on the table, you should know what's possible also.
Well, for one, this commander is kill on sight. I think of all. I mean, Vannifar, sure, too, but Urza immediately goes into effect, even without haste enablers. The question is Urza Paradox Engine level good?
I think so. I think it's better than Vannifar by a little bit because Vannifar...
Not just a little bit, a lot.
Yeah, by a lot. Because Vannifar has to get an activation off, and with Summoning Sickness, there's a natural check on that. Urza could go off the turn you cast it fairly easily. So... yeah, is it Paradox Engine good? Oh, sorry, I killed your lead in.
No, clearly the first broken thing you can do with this card is just play Paradox Engine.
Paradox Engine untaps all your artifacts every time you cast a spell, and all your artifacts are 0-cost artifacts. You're going to have 50 of them.
Yeah, you can just go bam, tap, bam, tap, bam, tap, and generate. You could, I don't know, I bet there's a way you can get like 50 mana or infinite mana by turn 3, turn 4 with this card.
Plus, Urza has a mechanic that's close to card draw on it.
Yeah.
So you can sort of get yourself out of some corners you might get into otherwise where you just don't have gas.
Yeah.
Urza can help you get out of that with that last ability.
I mean, you generate infinite mana, you can play your entire deck, essentially.
And Paradox Engine will help you get infinite mana. And there's a thing I want to talk about here. The mono blue is really, 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 really good at getting an artifact into play, a specific artifact. They're probably the best color at it. So to put this in mono blue and make Paradox Engine such a key linchpin in the deck, it's not going to be hard if you want to get Paradox Engine. So this is the suite of cards that you can run to make sure you can get Paradox Engine into play. Whir of Invention, which is instant speed, also uses your artifacts to cast it, even without Urza out. Reshape requires you to, I think, sacrifice an artifact to get one into play. There's Transmute artifacts, same sort of deal. There's Fabricate, another tutor for an artifact. You can use Kuldotha Forge Master, which is a little bit slower, but can sacrifice 3 artifacts and go tutor for artifacts. This is something that, I mean, there's 5 cards. So you can basically... just right there, have 6 copies of Paradox Engine in your deck.
Yeah, you're pretty much building the deck right now if you're going for the full competitive level. It's basically, how do we ramp Urza out? And once he's out, how do we get cards like Paradox Engine out? And then after that, how are you going to win the game with that?
Yeah.
You basically get to choose, right? There are a lot of different ways of doing it. But obviously it's God, it's so powerful. I'm so unhappy.
There's another very commonly used infinite combo. Combo. Yeah, which is Dramatic Reversal, which is 1 in a blue for an instant, and you untap all non-land permanents you control.
True.
And then Isochron Scepter, when you play it, you can...
you exile a CMC spell 2 or less.
Instant that's 2 or less. And it kind of imprints it onto Isochron Scepter, and then you can basically pay 2, tap the Scepter, and cast that spell. And so with Dramatic Reversal under Isochron Scepter, you can go infinite because Dramatic Reversal untaps the Isochron Scepter, and then boom. And so that's infinite mana as long as you have like 1 other mana rock. In this case, you're going to have 50. And then again, we said as soon as you get infinite mana with Urza, that last ability where you pay 5, shuffle your library, exile the top card, and then until end of turn, you may play that card without paying its mana cost, means that you can immediately play your entire deck, which is, basically means if you ever go infinite on mana, you're going to win. Because anytime you can play your entire deck, you're going to, have a couple cards in there that are just going to make you win.
Basalt Monolith and Rings of Bright Hearth or Power Artifact. Now, this is just another like mono blue staple in terms of like being able to untap the Basalt Monolith and generate more mana than it costs to untap it. Power Artifact is a very expensive card, but Rings of Bright Hearth, Basalt Monolith, I mean, they're all expensive cards. That's sort of the nature of...
Dramatic Reversal and Isochron aren't.
That's true. I mean, the thing about Mono Blue is they just have 1,000 different ways of doing something like this, and they have cards like Palinchron in the deck, in the colors that allow you to just do pretty crazy shenanigans in general. Unwinding Clock is a card that we saw Ashlyn use to great effect in game nights. Also, again, very good in terms of acting semi like a Prophet of Krufix /
I think it's Seaborn Muse in this deck, basically. Because imagine you just have like 6 or 7 artifacts out, which won't be hard at all. Then that means you're doing that last ability, shuffle your library, exile the top card, play it without paying its mana cost on everybody's turn. Just that on a base level is crazy. Blinkmoth Infusion, bring this one up. This is 12 blue for an instant, but it has affinity for artifacts, so it costs 1 colorless less to cast, or 1 generic less to cast for each artifact you control, and then you untap all artifacts.
Right.
So if you have enough artifacts, it wouldn't be that hard to just pay blue and untap all your artifacts.
Well, it's 14, so if you have 7 artifacts, you can tap them all for a blue mana, and this costs 7 less, so then you immediately just cast this, untap everything, and, you're on your way.
So Aetherflux Reservoir is also a card that would be very, very powerful in this deck because there's a bunch of cards. There's a whole suite of cards that bounce all your artifacts back to your hand.
Yep, and if they're all 0 cost, or you're already playing them and they can tap for mana, you can just replay all of them, and then boom, your life total is... You could storm off with Urza.
I think it'd be pretty easy the turn you play Urza, right? You play Urza, you play like 7 or 8 Cheerios style artifacts.
Or they're already on the battlefield from having drawn them earlier.
You play Aetherflux Reservoir, then you play something like Hurkyl's Recall on yourself. Mm-hmm. There's Rebuild, Retract, Displacement Wave.
Paradoxical Outcome.
Paradoxical Outcome. You bounce all those artifacts back to your hand. You play them again. Now, there's 7 or 8 of them, so that's 7 or 8 Aetherflux Reservoir triggers. If you can bounce them back to your hand one more time, you're now looking at, you've cast you've cast
15,
17,
16.
20 spells maybe, counting Urza that turn, counting,
and that's
the
1 plus 2
Aetherflux
plus 3
Reservoir.
plus 4 plus, so much life.
You're at easily over, 160 life, and
Paradoxical Outcome also just draws you all those cards too.
Paradoxical Outcome returns non-land permanents to your hand, and you draw a card for each one of them.
Yeah.
And again, because they're free to cast, you just drop them back down, but that is casting spells.
Yeah. You can play cards like Mycosynth Lattice to make everything an artifact, and then Memnarch. Just steal everyone's thing because you have infinite blue mana.
As soon as you go infinite. Yeah, and this creates infinite colored mana.
Yeah, that's the nutty part about it.
You can steal everything. So, all right.
Well, let's talk a little bit about his final line of text, which is 5 mana, shuffle your library, then exile the top card, and then you can play that card without paying its mana cost. So in a lot of ways, this is actually better than card draw because you're casting a card for free off the top of your library. Also, it says shuffle your library specifically, so you can't use stuff like Scroll Rack to stack the top of your library and then use those cards.
Brainstorm, those things don't work to like set up, but it doesn't matter because you're not going to do this hoping for what the top thing is. You're just going to do it just 50 times. I don't care what the top thing is because I'm going to do this enough where I'm going to find whatever it is that I'm looking for.
You can't cast lands off it, but you can play it.
Yeah, you play it.
You can play a land.
And you don't pay the mana cost. So whatever it is, that thing is happening.
Yeah.
It seems pretty nuts. I think easily competitive level broken if you build it with all the infinite combos.
Yeah.
If you don't, still seems very, very good. It harkens to Thrasios in a lot of ways too because that same play pattern of like I create a lot of mana, however much it is, whether it's infinite or not, and that allows me to just rifle through my deck and play a bunch of things. Because when you make the activation cost, in this case, I guess if it was colored, it wouldn't matter because the artifacts are creating blue mana.
I would have thought that it would be colored. No, they make it generic just because.
What I would have done with this card is the tap and untapped artifact you control, have it add 1 colorless mana, and then make it cost 4 and a blue to activate that last part where you shuffle your library and then play the top card.
Right, so you can't
keep a check and balance on it a little bit.
Instead, we have the card that we have in front of us right now. And not to mention, like, Thrasios is great when you get stuff like Training Grounds out, and the fact that you can partner with another commander, and you have to have a couple other pieces to really get it going, and a ton of mana. Urza just skips all of those steps by having the effect on him, and it's absurdly powerful. And you're playing the card, too. You're not just drawing it like with Thrasios. And the fact that all your artifacts just turn into mana rocks. It's for colored mana. Oh.
Imagine if Thrasios also had a ramp mechanic on him.
Yeah. That's
what Urza is.
Yeah.
They were like, if you have a lot of mana, you could just play cards for free.
Yeah.
But let's make him also help you have a lot of mana. It would feel bad to have him out and you don't have a lot of mana.
Yeah, and it would feel bad if you had him out a lot of mana and couldn't do anything with it. So let's give him an ability that can just get you right back in the game in case you're behind somehow by just playing cards off the top of your library for free.
I suppose we could take this opportunity here because for like a little game design discussion.
Yeah, this is probably the most interesting part of the episode for me too.
So I think recently, and I'm talking in the last 6 months maybe, we've seen a few cards that are a little bit scary to me. Vanifar, one of them. Bolas's Citadel, I think is on that list. And now Urza. Is Wizards making cards that are too powerful now? Have they strayed over the line?
Well, it's funny because in general, everyone sort of believes, not everyone, a lot of players will say that the most powerful cards came from Urza's Saga, which... course, shares a
If
namesake.
it has Urza in its name, we're already in trouble.
And that was because at R&D during the time, people were just going nuts. They're like, whatever, let's just make fun stuff. And they ended up making a ton of broken, busted stuff. And since then, we've all seen a marked decrease in terms of the general power level of things because they need to enter into Standard and in general. And then the cards that they print in Commander that are really powerful, like True Name Nemesis, weren't even that amazing for Commander. So they found, I think, a pretty good balance of not making super busted stuff. But even with like Paradox Engine.
Yeah, that's another one, and that was maybe a year before that.
Like I feel
2
like
years, maybe.
I don't think obviously R&D knows what they're doing, and they can see this card and go like, yeah, why not? But I don't think for Modern Horizons they were particularly being like, well, we should make sure that EDH doesn't get busted because of this.
I mean, I can understand it on a card that doesn't have the word legendary creature on it.
True.
But whenever that's there's only 8 or 9 of those per set. You think that's in-house, they'd be like, okay, let's look at the legendary creatures real quick, and let's make sure that they're not like absolutely busted broken for Commander. Because you can sort of forgive Ballistic Citadel and Paradox Engine a little bit. They're going to be in the 99. But something like Urza, like you look at it and your first thought has to be this can be your Commander because it says legendary creature right on it.
Yeah. My second thought is this is probably the most powerful mono blue Commander ever printed.
I don't know. Teferi's pretty good.
Teferi's good, but
Teferi's going to do what this deck's going to do in almost a very similar way. It's going to go infinite
it comes
on
out
mana.
a little later. It costs
True.
more. You can only activate it once a turn unless you use Chain Veil tactics. Like,
well, I mean, that's the whole thing, but yeah.
This card has everything on the actual card. And it's not like Teferi where you have to like choose one. Because sometimes people will play Teferi and like, all right, fine, I'll draw cards or discard or whatever,
Well, that's normal Teferi, but the combo-y Teferi deck. I don't know. Maybe. I mean, I have the Teferi deck, the combo-y one, and it's very powerful. This could be more powerful, though. It's definitely possible.
Yeah. I don't know. I just feel like because like fast mana is one of the prime staples of cEDH decks, and Urza being able to create more fast mana seems very powerful. Especially,
it's like, hi, my deck has 20 Moxes in it.
Yeah.
Like, how is that not going to be just crazy broken?
Yeah, do you think this card's going to get banned?
I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I think no, based on the fact that, like...
Teferi exists, too.
The only way it would get banned is if it was a step above what's already Tier 1 right now.
Right.
If it's basically equal to the Breakfast Hulk decks and the Doomsday decks and the Teferi decks and the Nagilas and all that, then I think it's fine. Like,
yeah.
But if it starts looking like, oh, this deck is, even better than those, then I think the RC might consider banning in that circumstance. Because in general, what do we see with Vanifar? It wasn't even the most popular or most built Commander from that set, which I think says a lot about Commander players and is actually great.
Yeah.
They aren't trying to skew towards the most powerful thing all the time. Like, a lot of people recognized, Vanifar, it's super powerful. It's actually so powerful that I don't actually think it's going to be fun.
Yeah, and it also leads to a very linear play style of like you have to get these cards in that order for it to win.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people can, and also like you're shuffling your library constantly to get those cards. So
Annoying.
I can see people not liking that kind of thing. Urza, I can see having a similar effect because if you are just constantly activating the 5, unless you're doing it infinitely, you do have to shuffle your library every single time.
I mean, I think most groups would be like, just do the top card because it doesn't matter.
Card.
Like,
unless you're
unless
trying to
you brainstormed or something,
Right.
like, unless you should know it, then you can shortcut the shuffle thing. Like, if
Yeah.
everybody looks around and goes, I don't know what the top card is, right? Nobody does. So shuffling it won't make any difference. So let's just speed this up. But I think it's an interesting question, and I do think maybe R&D is straying in the wrong direction with power level of cards.
Oh, interesting.
Because I see Ballistic Citadel, Vanifar, and Urza for sure as like, wow, we should probably take the dial and turn it down a notch or two.
Well, think about the first Commander sets that came out, because we have to know this is the first time Modern Horizons has existed.
Right.
The first Commander sets had stuff like Animar and stuff in there, and those are considered very, very powerful. At least for that time, they're very powerful.
Yeah.
So maybe we're seeing a little bit of that effect, which is like new shiny thing. We want to make a splash. We want to make this set. We want people to buy it, obviously, and we want more people to invest in these cards.
But I mean, they should learn, like, Vanifar doesn't make people buy sets. Feather does.
Right.
Teysa, the new Teysa was much more popular than Vanifar. Don't make the most powerful card. That's actually not what Commander players mostly want.
Already in the most powerful color, too, as well in Commander, so...
Well, there's some debate about that based on our statistics episode. But
I know.
All right, so we're going to leave Urza behind now. We're going to let him go. He's going to go play in the competitive pot over there where I don't usually
I don't think you can
dwell.
make a casual Urza deck, really.
I mean, maybe. But speaking of Feather.
Yes. Speaking of Feather, when the card came out, there was such hype around it. It was amazing. On our Discord server, which is available to certain tiers of our Patreon, people decided to start brewing decks around Feather. And so what we did was we had a server-wide, hey, come on into this channel. If you have a deck list or want to talk about cards you might think are cool in Feather, post them here and deliver them to us, and we'll take a look at them. And now that we're, like, I think a couple of months out from that Feather discussion, we have a couple of highlights that we wanted to highlight from our community, and we're going to be doing the same thing for Urza. So if you are a part of our Discord already, you can just hop on over that channel and start brewing away. If you're not, you can join our Patreon, and you might get shouted out on a future episode of the Command Zone podcast.
This is a good look behind the curtain, too, to see how our Discord works for those people that aren't currently patrons.
Yeah.
It is pretty cool and something, we'd like you to consider.
Oh, it's great. You can just be
joining
like,
our little
hey,
family.
I like this card, and it'll pop it up, and they'll show it in the chat, and other people are like, oh, this works because of this. Like, oh, actually, that interaction doesn't work. And so it's great to get some rules clarification sometimes, or just be in a like-minded community that we all love and appreciate, of course.
Okay, so what's some of the cool Feather stuff that people came up with?
So Clutch, the Legion's Jank Edge, decided to make a dinosaur-themed Feather deck because Enrage, which is awards you essentially for dealing damage to your own creatures, and of course Feather has a lot of targeted spells that are targeting your own stuff. And so I thought that was pretty cute. Unfortunately, they did not put Rampaging Froston in, so take damage.
There's like Ryle and some other stuff.
Yeah.
That actually does seem like it would be great. And there's
like with Trapjaw Tyrant and stuff, you're just like, you're going nuts if you can keep
there's the one that
back.
basically like O-rings people too.
Yeah.
Or the one that just deals damage. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Sun's Champion decided to make a token/Heroic Matters deck. Heroic also cares about when you target creatures with your own spells. And they have Mentor of the Meek, Young Pyromancer, and of course Goblin Slide, which if you're casting a non-creature spell, you get to pay one and make a goblin.
Probably Monastery Mentor in there too.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that sounds a little bit like my version. Yeah.
And Braden, who was a moderator on Discord as
Braden
well.
Braden is our resident competitive player. Yeah.
We had to include one cEDH deck here. There's only 6 creatures in the deck. It's running Burnout, Red Elemental Blast, every like anti-blue thing in the deck, and has, like we said before, cEDH plays a lot of Cheerios-based ramp. And he has 7 zero-cost ramp artifacts, and he actually made a full primer breaking down the deck as well that you can check out.
Maybe we'll link it in the description. I think he'll give us that link. And then I want to say, too, that Braden actually said that he took his Feather deck to like a GP and played it in some of the competitive like pods there, and it did very well, which is surprising. I wouldn't have thought that you could really, even Feather, that you could make it like cEDH level, but he said that like he's got a pretty control-y version, but that it hangs. So that's pretty cool. Impressive. Yeah.
Red, white, hanging in cEDH. That's a first.
It is very impressive.
Yeah, so if you guys want to contribute and join and show us your own brews and discuss it with Josh, myself, and the rest of the community, you can do so on our Discord, join our Patreon. All the details are there.
All right, now it's time for To the Listeners. What do you think about Urza? Do you think that we broke it down correctly, that we were going in the right direction? Maybe we were going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, do you think it is cEDH? It's going to be a real contender? Do you think this is going to break the format? Do you think it's going to get banned?
Do you think Wizards of the Coast has been maybe pushing the power level a little bit too high, like I put out there?
Yeah.
Do you agree with that, or do you think we're way off base?
Or do you think they're doing exactly the right thing? Either way, let us know. You can tweet at us, comment, or post an email. It's like they're sending a letter. commandzonecast@gmail.com. Or, of course, join our Discord on Patreon, where we will be brewing decks around this card immediately after this episode releases.
And if you want to buy a bunch of zero or very cheap costed artifacts for your Urza deck.
By the way, a lot of them cost very little.
Yeah,
like
and actually, this is one of the great things about Card Kingdom, because some other websites you go to, it's difficult to order like 1.25-cent card.
Right. Oh yeah, you have to pay $1 or $2 minimum.
Yeah, Card Kingdom, you just make a big cart with a bunch of this stuff in it, and they have all of it, and it makes it a lot easier. So if you go to cardkingdom.com/commandzone when you're ordering all the cards for your Urza deck, or maybe you've seen another legendary creature, we don't know which ones have been revealed yet, from Modern Horizons. We really do appreciate everybody that uses that affiliate link. They help us with game nights, extra turns, this podcast, all of our content.
And so does Ultra Pro. Obviously, we have these cool playmats that we will be giving away soon as well.
Oh, yeah, we have the anime style playmats. I forgot to call it out.
Super cool. They had alternate art.
Oh, that one is sweet.
Yeah, Soren. So they created alternate art and half the... you have a 50% chance of opening a Japanese pack and getting an alternate art Planeswalker. Or each time a Planeswalker shows up, you have a 50% chance of it being...
Only in Japanese booster
Only
packs.
Japanese booster packs. But yeah, these planets are awesome. Thank you, Ultra Pro, for sponsoring the show as well. All right, let's move on to the end side where we're talking about something cool outside the world of Magic. You wrote this down. I'm excited. The next season's coming out, right?
Yeah, so June 5th, the new season of Handmaid's Tale.
June, a very fitting name.
Yeah.
A fitting month for the show.
It's the third season, and I did want to mention it ahead of time because I wanted everybody to have a chance to go to Hulu. It's on Hulu, and binge through the first 2 seasons so they can catch up and watch on season 3. Because I think, I'm going to say this statement, and I think it's true for me right now. I think this is the best television show, quote unquote, that exists right now.
It's definitely better than Game of Thrones currently.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that. I think I will stand by that statement. For me, anyway, it's my favorite TV show. I say that in quotes because obviously it's streaming. It's on Hulu. Right now, it's very, very good. The acting, the writing's really good. It's shot beautifully.
Yeah, the cinematography is great.
Yeah.
It's also a incredibly depressing and sad show and very
it's-
dramatic. It's not like a cheery thing to watch, but for that, I usually tend to stray away from those kinds of shows. I found myself sucked more and more into it because of all the parts of the production are so well done, and the story itself feels very relevant and very pertinent as well as just modern day.
It's definitely a poignant story, and yeah, it's great. I would just recommend it highly to anybody who wants to check out a really good TV show.
Handmaid's Tale.
But yes, for those that listen to this podcast or watch it with your children, it's probably not appropriate. It's like Game of Thrones. It's like Game of Thrones.
Yeah. The Lord opens.
Actually, it's not even like Game of Thrones. It's a little like Game of Thrones.
Blessed be the Father.
I'd say I would be
Blessed they
less inclined to let like my teenager or younger watch it than I would Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I would I would say if I had to choose one of the two, Game of Thrones if they want to be involved in pop culture, Handmaid's Tale if they want more thought experiments or stuff. Because it is definitely because Game of Thrones is at the end of the day, it's not like...
No, I'm saying I would not allow anybody that's like, if they were my teenager or younger, to even watch Handmaid's Tale, where I would consider Game of Thrones.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Especially in recent seasons, Game of Thrones got way less.
That's true. Nudie.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
Way less nudie.
Way less nudie.
Something else that is not nudie at all is the Masters of Modern podcast, our sister podcast. That's how they like to be described, by the way.
Hi, it's Alex Cousin and Ben Bateman. We are not nude today.
So those two guys, they really know the Modern format. And of course, our preview card, Urza, is from Modern Horizons, has a ton of new cards that have never existed in Modern before. So I'm sure those guys are going to be breaking down exactly which ones are going to fit into which decks or create new archetypes or all that kind of stuff. So I'm sure they're super stoked about it. You can find them on Twitter at the MMcast. You can go to YouTube, just type Masters of Modern into the search bar, or you can go to collected.company and they are right next to us.
Yeah, at the MMcast. Good guys. They're going to be having a blast with this next.
They got to be going crazy. That's like when Commander product comes out for us. This is that for them.
Yeah, but this is the first time it's ever happened.
Yeah, exactly. I feel bad because we get that every year.
I know, right? Our editor for the show is Jared Lafreniere, and special thanks to Geoffrey Palmer as well, who makes the living card animations behind us, and as well in front and ending the videos on youtube.com/the Command Zone Podcast. You can find Geoffrey at livingcardsmtg on Twitter.
All right, everybody. Thanks for watching.
And we'll see you next time.
Peace.
Thank you for your attention. For further inquiries, send an email to commandcast@rocketjump.com or ask us on Twitter at JFWong and at Josh Lee Kwai. See you later, alligator.
Greetings, humans.